Oh, good afternoon, counselors. And good afternoon to the public, whoever has joined us. I guess I could take my mask off. I'm Counselor Borrego, and this is the City of Albuquerque City Council study session. Today is Monday, December the 20th, 2021, and we are joining you live via Zoom. It looks like members of the public will have the ability to view the meeting live on YouTube at https://YouTube/6KFGENNZ dash 2G. The live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. Counselors, can you all hear me? Thank you. So counselors, we have two items on our agenda this afternoon. One is approval of our summary minutes of May 24th, 2021. So I would entertain a motion. Well, before I do that, I just want to make sure that all counselors are joining us, and I think that everyone is on. And if you haven't joined us, you will be joining us soon, I'm sure. So I need a motion for agenda item A, approval of our minutes. So can I have a motion?
So moved, Madam President.
Councilor Bassan, looking lovely as usual. Do I have a second? Councilor Sena, thank you for the second. So do I need a roll call? Yes. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Ortega. Oh, Miss Hinojos, I'm sorry.
Yes, Counselor.
Thank
I'm
you.
here.
Yes.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Counselor Benton.
Yes.
Counselor Davis. Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Borrego.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you, counselors. So our next order of business is a discussion regarding the resignation of CPO board members, and I'm for the study session. And remember, this is only for discussion, counselors, but I thought it was imperative that we discuss this. And as we move forward, also, I'm hoping that some of our newer counselors are listening to this. But as you know, we have received several resignations, and I thought it would behoove us to just talk about how staff maybe should be moving forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Melendres, our attorney and our director, to discuss that particular agenda item.
Thank you, Madam President and counselors. So as I think folks are aware, the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board is a 9-member board. It was constituted generally in its current format back in approximately 2014 and replaced the prior Police Oversight Board. Since that time, the City Council has populated the board with appointees over the years using a process that the ordinance calls for, which essentially calls for City Council staff to vet the applications and to submit folks to be appointed to the board by the City Council. Recently, 4 members of that board resigned. So now it is sitting at 5 members presently. Another member will be up for reappointment early next year, and another member will be termed out. The ordinance that establishes this board has not significantly been updated for several years. However, there is an ordinance in the legislative process to bring some needed updates to this board and to the ordinance that governs how they function. And that will be before the council at some time early next year. That will be a really good opportunity for the council to evaluate some of the aspects of the organization and the board that might ultimately help in keeping these seats filled, and hopefully reduce turnover in the future.
I'm sorry, counselors, I was muted. I also see that Ms. Diane McDermott has joined us. And Ms. McDermott, would you like to add anything to this discussion?
Thank you, President Borrego and fellow council. Yes, I do think that the ordinance needs some pretty significant revision. I also think some selection process needs to be revised to select board members that are able to, it's a unique board member who is able to dedicate the amount of time that's necessary and have the skills to do it. And so we've got some great board members, but unfortunately not all board members can really satisfy the time. There are other board members that over the years have not always been the most ideal candidates. So it's just a matter of, I think, a better selection that needs to occur and some ordinance revisions overall.
Counselors, do you have any questions for either Mr. Melendres or Ms. McDermott? I do have a question, Ms. McDermott. Can you just specify, I'm sorry, I saw Counselor Sena. Go ahead, Counselor Sena.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. I think some of the concerns, even when we heard, even in the court hearing with the Department of Justice and meeting with members of our monitoring team, I think that so far staff has really stepped up in this process in vetting potential candidates. I think we have changed a lot of this. I think now it's really a discussion of what other benefits can we really be providing when it comes to incentivizing others to also participate for those that don't have really the traditional work schedule to allow this type of flexibility. I think that the sponsors of the revisions of the ordinance, we have all come together and had these discussions about what we can be doing better, whether it's reducing some of the times in terms of certain trainings that's not required by the CASA, but rather by ordinance. Is something important that we have all looked at. And I don't want to belabor that because I think that that's a discussion that will be done when the ordinance comes to council. But I do want to mention, I did have some concerns from folks really on my comments as to this last report that was given for our semi-annual report given by the CPOA. And so for my question to Ms. McDermott is, when that report was released and stated why there was, and something I don't want to also belabor much more than what was already done, because we certainly dug through that at public safety when the report came to public safety and also again to council when we received it. But just because it has been some issue among board members, can you go through why is it that there was 22 complaints that were closed as compared to 104 complaints closed in the last reporting period out of that report?
Well, as I had mentioned at the public safety, and unfortunately I didn't have all my notes in front of me in preparation of the question, but a variety of reasons, COVID certainly being part of it, lower staffing. We only had 2 investigators through a significant portion of that time, a large volume of complaints that required a decent amount of involvement, protests, So we were focusing on certain protest complaints that took priority. So there were some issues there. Those are things that are off the top of my head without having the information in front of me.
Well, thank you for that. I know that I kind of spurred this question onto you, but I just want to make it clear, what is the board's role in reviewing many of these complaints, or just out of this report in reviewing this report? What is the expectations when it comes to learning of some of these numbers, whether or not it was 22 or not?
I'm sorry, you broke up there a little bit, but I think your expectation, you wanting to know what the board member's role is that what I understood?
That's right.
Okay. So the board members, the purpose of reviewing complaints for the most part should be to take information from those complaints and look for policy trends, policy changes that could be recommended. That's the big picture, the work that the board should be focusing on, as opposed to some of the more detail-oriented things. That opportunity is available for a citizen to file like an appeal if they are not satisfied with the findings of that particular complaint. They have an appeal right, so they can dive in and discuss that individual complaint. But the overall purpose of reviewing the cases would be for understanding policy recommendations, which either come from the investigators if we see some kind of an issue, or from the board members themselves in the purpose of reviewing the various cases. So that's kind of the big picture overview, is to look for policy issues.
Thank you for that. And, again, I think that through our revisions of the ordinance and overall discussion among counselors, even with the DOJ and particular interest groups when it comes to the CASA, I think that it's, really important to really convey the expectations of the board. It's something that I have stressed, it's something that I have said, but it's something that I've also mentioned when it comes to the sustainability of this board, especially that this special session was called specifically to talk about the sustainability of this board. I think that that's what's important. I have, of course, many other comments, and I think that hopefully a lot of the revisions will help, especially since other counselors will be carrying on that revision of that ordinance. And I know that Councilor Benton is one of them, and Councilor Bassan, and I know that Councilor Benton has his own statements and questions, but I just want to make sure that we have had this discussion, and I know that even council has changed their own processes to select these board members to really convey the expectations. I think that in terms of time, that we ask this many times over of those that seek to serve on any board and commission, to make sure that this is really a time commitment and it is a volunteer time, even though this board is one of the most important boards that we have in the city. But I think that, we can step up as a council to lend support. However, it is also up to those that are seeking to sit on this important board to also understand that expectation when they willingly sign up. So I think, when it comes to sustainability, hopefully we will have some course correction on that with this update, as I stated. However, again, it is really important conveying this message to the board, even in reviewing of our last report, what we can do better and why we have to do better, not just because of the court, but also because our community expects it of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sena. Councilor Benton?
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Councilor Sena, for all your work on this effort. Of course, and as well as Councilor Bassan. I know that you understand, Ms. McDermott, that the current bill of 78 is a work in progress. We're certainly want to continue the debate over that, and moving forward, I think it's right to move that forward into the new year. But what's your general take? Are we going in the right direction on that? We know we've really racked our brains, I think, collectively, in the sponsors of this. So do you think we're on the right track? I'll leave it at that, and I'll say if we're not, then we certainly, and even if we are, we certainly want to keep the doors open to discussion with you.
Madam President and Councillor Benton, yes, I do think that the ordinance revisions are going down the right path. From what I've read, there are some things that probably would still be wise to tweak and adjust, but I definitely think there are some things that are in the right direction. One of which being that the citizens have the right of an appeal, and that the board is more reviewing for informational purposes on the front end rather than signing off on the findings, because that is a very time intensive process, and it doesn't make a lot of sense for citizens to file an appeal to the very same body that already delved into their case and made a decision. So having the front end go through for the most part and just have an informational aspect to it, and then the citizen has that appeal right, and there's an audit process that would still be entailed. I think that's a wiser direction, which will help the board be more focused on the bigger picture things and not drain their time as much.
Thank you. I believe that, and we are working towards getting that in there if it's not in there already. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. I just wanted to acknowledge Ms. McDermott for stepping up and really helping out as our director in this area left and took on another job. And, I just want to acknowledge you for that, because that was a huge responsibility to step up to. I also want to mention that I see, and I just saw her and she just went away, Ms. Galloway. I know that you can't speak because this is intended for the council, but certainly, and I won't be here, but the next council president and certainly our director, Chris Melendres, would accept any comments that you might have regarding the structure as we move forward with this board. And I just also want to acknowledge Councillor Sena for her work. I know she's still there, but I don't see her on there. She is. This was a really difficult sort of arrangement, I guess you could say, coming from the court and putting it together, and there's bound to be some ups and downs, but hopefully with the new proposals that are coming forward with the next council, those, some of those things can be tweaked, and the responsibility for the people that do volunteer to be on this board, the time commitment, just generally the responsibility that they have is, can't be stressed enough, I guess. So from that perspective, and that's kind of why I wanted to have this study session, because I thought it was important that we acknowledge that, the people who were on the board who did resign, I mean, they all had their own reasons, as we saw in their letters. But moving forward, we can only move forward at this point, but we can learn from the past as well. So I just wanted to make those comments. Councillor Bassan, you look like you want to say something, so I'm looking at you, thinking you do.
No, thank you, Madam President. I'm just acknowledging, I agree, and I think that we're on the right track. I look forward to the new proposed ordinance and some of the, I hope, relief that it will bring to the board while making it a little bit more achievable for aligning it with the CASA rather than an extra burden.
Any other councillors? Councillor Sena.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll just say one more thing. I think that especially since I won't be able to carry on some of the discussion, I think that some of the revisions, even in the ordinance, something that's important to me, not just the sustainability, but in my view, how this board may change over time. because we're seeking to accommodate. Of course, we are not looking for folks to have PhDs. This is the Civilian Police Oversight for a reason, in that we want community members to really step up to give that, everyday person's perspective when it comes to interactions with our police officers. But at the same time, they're also acting hopefully as impartial judges. And so, as my change in part of the ordinance would to also have the oath of office, I think it's important that this board is treated differently because it is so important. And hopefully that those changes will be continued on for this next incoming council. And I do acknowledge that the current serving board members are really stepping up, especially now with other members having resigned, that they're stepping up to fill an even larger gap. I know that in terms of COVID has always presented challenges in the times that even I myself have been in office. But I think that right now we as a council have also appropriated for more investigators. We have tried to meet with members to see what other relief measures we can provide. So I hope that the new incoming council will really take that on. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sena. I don't see any other comments from councillors. It appears that Chris Sullivan, did you want to say something, Chris?
Thank you, Councillor. All I wanted to say is we've been working really hard behind the scenes trying to get this board staffed, and hopefully by the council meeting in January, we should have a few people up, and we're going to try to work over break and get them forwarded to Director McDermott and Vice Chair Galloway. So hopefully the process will work really well. I've identified 6 or 7 people, and council staff will be interviewing them hopefully in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. And I just want to acknowledge Chris, because he has done quite a bit of work around this for the last several years. And, his leadership and professionalism has been one of the things that we look to. So, and Ms. Galloway, if you would just mention to maybe some of the other CPOA board members, if they have comments, I'm sure the next council would be listening and wanting to hear what those are in order to solidify that structure a little more. So I'm sure they'd be open to those comments. You can direct those to Chris Melendres, our director, and he would be accepting those on behalf of the next council. So with that, councilors, we're going to, unless there's any other business, we are going to go ahead and adjourn this study session and get ready for our 3 o'clock council meeting. And I just want to remind councilors that there's a different login for the city council meeting. So thank you all. Thank you all for joining us.